So I'll be reading from 1 Corinthians 13, just verses 12 to 13. We don't yet see things clearly. We're squinting in a fog, peering through a mist. But it won't be long before the weather clears and the sun shines bright. We'll all see it then. See it all, see it all as clearly as God sees us, knowing him directly just as he knows us. But for right now, until that completeness, we have three things to do to lead us toward that consummation: trust steadily in God, hope unswervingly, love extravagantly. And the best of the three is love. So that was obviously message translation since it's my favorite, but I just like hearing the different translations. Um, and I know that many people don't look at them. So wanted to share that. And just a little story of when I was in high school, I was struggling with some stuff. I don't even remember what it was, but I remember this specific experience. Um, and I literally found myself squinting through the fog, trying to find God through that hard time. So I was driving home from work. I worked at Subway. I was 16 working at Subway. And there's this road when you get off Route 9 and you're going to Colfax, where I live. Um, and it's it just feels longer than it really is. And so it was a foggy night and I could still see well enough to drive. It was just really foggy. You couldn't see probably, you know, too far ahead of you. So I couldn't really tell exactly where I was going on the road, even though, there were landmarks on the road. I couldn't see any of those landmarks. So I realized that the road I was on was just kind of like life. The road is short in the scheme of things, but it feels like forever. And even though we know we'll get home eventually, we still have to follow that road. So Paul tells us in his letter to the Corinthians that if we trust steadily, hope unswervingly, and love extravagantly, we can continue on this road without faltering. So I just want to go through those three things. So when we trust steadily, not necessarily continuously, but steadily, sometimes we'll fall off the road a little. But as long as we hold steady and don't, freak out, pull the wheel, we can get back on the road. Hope unswervingly. Our hope should be pointed in one direction, Jesus Christ, but sometimes the world can convince us that our hope should be directed on something different. For me, I feel like growing up as a young girl, that hope was turned towards romantic relationships where my gaze was just pointed at that, and the ultimate goal was to get married one day. But the ultimate goal is to be with Jesus Christ. And while it's not bad to have our hope in other things, our ultimate hope should be that we trust Jesus and be with him one day. And then love extravagantly. So this one doesn't actually relate to being on the road as much, unswervingly and the other. Um, but it's the one that really relates to our lives every day. I have a professor at school who pretty much in every class I took with him said the same thing. Like we had never heard it before, but it just kind of nailed it in our brains. A lot of people think the opposite of love is hate, but the opposite of love is actually indifference. So when we are ignorant or indifferent towards people, we're not loving them. I think we should continue to evaluate how we treat and see people in our everyday lives. And that's what Paul is trying to tell us to do when we love extravagantly. So I'm just going to read that um, last thing one more time. You guys can close your eyes if you want to imagine the fog, or you can just listen. We don't yet see things clearly. We're squinting in a fog, peering through a mist. But it won't be long before the weather clears and the sun shines bright. We'll see it all then. See it all as clearly as God sees us, knowing Him directly, just as He knows us. But for right now, until that completeness, we have three things to do to lead us toward that consummation: trust steadily in God, hope unswervingly, love extravagantly. And the best of the three is love.